Welcome to Better Business for Good TV, Small Business Matters. I'm your host, Brenda Thomson, co-founder of the Better Business for Good company. On today's episode, I'm talking with Catie Paterson from Catie Paterson Consulting about the if, when, and how of managing redundancies. This episode was recorded live at a recent Connect, Collaborate, Contribute event in collaboration with our impact partners, Just Peoples. Fantastic. Welcome, Catie. It's so lovely to have you here talking about redundancy. I don't know that it's a wonderful topic to talk about, but it's certainly one that you've been facing a lot lately. So this is Catie Paterson from Catie Paterson Consulting. She specializes in delivering focused HR solutions with a personal touch, and she does have a lovely personal touch. Catie's strength is in successfully managing stakeholders at all levels, delivering invaluable tools, strategies, and results through all areas of a business, but particularly in relation, obviously, to HR management. She's passionate about human connection, and she has years of industry experience and is dedicated to getting the job done. Inherently, Catie is down to earth and offers services that are practical and no nonsense. And it's some of that no nonsense wisdom that I suspect we're going to be hearing about today. So welcome, Catie, and let's talk redundancies. So
yes,
the first question that I had here was, why would you consider redundancies? But that's probably a bit of an obvious question given the current climate, but let's ask it anyway. So when does a business...
Look,
yep.
And usually with HR, there's always a yes but no answer. So, and my clients go, okay. So I think some of the main reasons are, yes, it's about the role and not the individual. I think that's really, really important to distinguish right up from the front. You aren't talking about personalities. You're not talking about people. You're not talking about individuals. You are talking about roles. Does the role require to be in the business? So if the role, one reason you would consider redundancy is if the role no longer exists, and that could be due to technology, it could be due to reducing costs because you haven't got as many sales coming through the door. It could be that the business is closing down or moving, and it could be another reason is brought out by another company. The other reason is that you are looking for efficiencies within the business, some process efficiencies and systems, and therefore those roles may be taken up by that new technology or a new process or a system, or a business wants to focus on another, a new income stream.
So can any role be made redundant?
Well, it's a yes but no. There are some parameters you do need to follow. Any role can be made redundant as long as it's not required by the business. It's not about the person. It's not about the individual. So the role can't be replaced for a minimum of 6 months. So if, for example, if you make an IT developer role redundant, you can't turn around 3 weeks later and go, oh, I need that role now. And bring someone on board. Therefore, what you have done is effectively terminated someone unfairly. And that could end you up in a whole lot of hot water. So you've got to really make sure that you don't require the role for a minimum of 6 months. You could probably stretch it to 5 if you're lucky, but in this climate, I wouldn't. In the COVID world, I wouldn't. Some other parameters is no one should be engaged in that role or a similar role in the business in that current form. So the role can be reallocated or split up to existing team members, but you can't say, oh, okay, well, that's not the same role, but it has the same duties and responsibilities, and I'll have a different job title. That won't work. And it's upon the employer to ensure that what I call the redundancy is genuine, which means that you've asked yourself some of the questions above of why you are needing a redundancy and the requirements of the business needs. You really need to sit down and look at your strategic plan and look at your balance sheet and look at your numbers and your overheads and say, what are the requirements of the business and what roles do I need? What roles are in excess, so to speak, of the new structure or in line with my business cash flow, and what are the non-negotiable roles that I need in order to continue being in business and to make an income.
So if you're a small business owner and you're thinking, oh, I'm nervous about taking on staff because I might discover I don't need them and that I got it all wrong and that I can't afford them, that's okay, because you can make them redundant if for genuine reasons.
Yes, and if you are a small business owner with less than 15 employees, life is a lot easier. And 15 employees means all casuals, all part-time and all full-time staff members. So it doesn't mean I've got 14 full-time staff members and 5 casual. Oh, I've only got 14. No, it's actually the whole number. And that does not include ABN contractors either. So people that you bring in as consultants or ABN contractors.
So in what way is it easier if you've got less than 15 employees?
You do have to follow what's called the Small Business Checklist, which is under the Fair Work Act. But generally speaking, you still have to provide that there's a genuine reason for redundancy. You have to provide a consultation process, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But sometimes if you are an employer with less than 15, you don't necessarily need to pay redundancy payments. But here's the caveat. You really need to look at what modern award your business falls under, or that job role falls under, to ensure that you don't have to pay, there is no redundancy payments involved. And it's not about what the business as a whole modern award falls under, it's actually what the role is. Some businesses have 20 awards that they're governed by, depending on the roles in the business, which is just fabulous. Australian workplace laws are just very, very complicated.
And you mentioned ending up in hot water earlier, and you've just said Australian workplace laws are very complicated. What are the legal implications of this whole redundancy thing?
There is a process that you need to follow, and the first process is, as I said before, really look at the business and what it requires, what roles it needs and what it doesn't need, and then look at how you're going to communicate with those affected people in those roles, and you really need to have a consultation process with them. You can't just turn up and say, can I have a word to you in the boardroom? Here's your money, your role is made redundant. That can't happen. If it does happen, you'll get yourself in hot water again. So what my suggestion is, and the process states, is that you consult with the employees. Consultation means that you sit down and say, listen, we've had a bit of a business operational review. This has affected the role that you're in. We're sorry that it's affected you personally, but we want to sit down and provide you with a consultation period it has to be a minimum of a week. Sometimes awards state how long that consultation period is. So once again, have a look at your modern awards. And say, we're giving you this week to think about what other roles you think you might like to consider in the business, and other options that we may not have considered either. We will both go away and consider these options, come back to us in a week's time, and we will have that conversation. In the event that we don't have anything, or we can't come to an agreement, or the business can't justify another role, or you're going into another role, your role will be made redundant, and we will talk about numbers then, notice periods, redundancy periods, entitlements, those things. You need to provide written confirmation at the consultation period, so a letter detailing all that. And then when you come back and the result is that the role is going to be made redundant, you have to provide written confirmation of that, including the numbers, so net numbers and gross numbers. So you need to do your homework on that. So that's where a really good payroll person comes in, or a really good accountant comes in, and I'm not going to go there because I can't even get a spreadsheet to add up. So ask your accountant, because there are tax implications for both the employer and the employee as well.
Wow. So
But you've
so
got
you
to
really
make
need
sure
good,
that you get it
yeah,
right.
you need good financial advice and you need good HR advice. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So are there alternatives to redundancy?
Look, yeah, there are. Um, and there are a couple of things that have really come out over the last six to 12 months that probably weren't on the radar of any other business before, or they've actually been normalised and expedited. So we've all heard about job sharing. You might be able to move someone into a job sharing role, and that has a whole different process again. And making sure that if you can retrain someone and reskill someone, if you've got that ability to do that. A lot of small businesses don't have that ability or that time or that financial backing to do that, and I get that. Some of the other things it could be, look at your other entities. When a role is being made redundant, you have to consider roles within other entities that are related to your business. So, for example, say you've got a law firm, and part of your law firm is affiliated with a credit refinancing, credit debtors collection, like Janine's business. You need to search for alternative roles within that business as well. So that's the business entities. And that was with any job or anything that you have people returning, or you want people coming and looking at different roles within the business. You might want to consider having the whole business move to a 3 or 4 day week, and everyone goes pro rata. You might want to renegotiate with the employee different hours. You also might want to retrain, or for them to take paid leave while the business is taking some time to reestablish itself or whatever. Leave without pay is a completely different option, and that has to be negotiated on a individual basis with the individual employee. There are a couple of other things around redundancy that you really need to consider, and that's really, as I mentioned before, it's really about the role and not the individual. If you state that you are if you are a bigger organisation and want to have a lot of you're going to make a lot of roles redundant, you might want to consider job spilling all roles within the business. Excuse me, my PA is not doing very well this morning. Job roles within all the business and people applying for those roles, and then those people who are not successful in those roles will be made redundant. Those roles will be made redundant. So, for example, you've got 8 admin people now. You might only require 5 admin. So you job spill all those admin roles and have the existing people apply for those roles. And so 3 people who are not successful will be made redundant.
Oh, my head is absolutely spinning, and I'm just hearing the need for different types of professional advice, and also the need for exceptionally good communication within an organisation to try and enable things to go as smoothly as possible, and really caring about your people. So caring about doing the best possible thing you can to keep your people secure.
You're spot on, Brenda. So it's about the communication process. It's about the change management process. Also, what's going to happen and how you're going to look after the people that are left behind, because they may feel very, very anxious about, why was it them and not me? And why do I still have a job and they don't? And that is very, very prevalent at the moment. The other thing I think is really important to point out is that the process actually needs to be free from discrimination. So, I like that person. It's not about that anymore. It's about the role and not the individual. So really be sure of why you are making that role redundant over someone else's and how you justify that. Because you don't want to end up at Fair Work with an unfair redundancy. which is effectively an unfair termination. So any termination, including a redundancy, has to be fair, it has to be reasonable, and it has to be just.
Which is probably sorry, go. Wanted to say something else?
No.
Okay, I just saw we had a question in the chat box. Is there a definition of redundancy?
Yes, there is. It is when a business no longer requires a role,
right?
Effectively.
So it's.
And I can go into the other legal definitions, but
that's all right. We might. That was. Is there anything else you wanted to add before I open up the tables for questions?
No, I'm more than happy to get questions answered, because it's just such a minefield.
Oh, absolutely.
And particularly at the moment.
Yes.
If we take down and put stand down aside, stand down is a completely different issue to termination and all those things. So put stand down aside, but I'm happy to answer any questions, because it's such a broad topic, and it's such a yes but no topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So if anybody has got questions, if you want to put your hands up, and then I'll get the hosts at each table. If somebody at your table puts their hand up, can you just pop them up on stage for me? So Kerry, can you pop Janine up on stage? I think she has a question. Okay, I got it. Cool. Janine.
Okay. The 5 to 6 month rule, when business can be, so topsy-turvy these days, you don't know you're going to land a big, contract, and say you did put off that IT person, you didn't know it was coming. So how can you have to delegate it to someone else or whatever, but that's a very specific role. And if you do need to recruit within that 6 months, you said you can get away with 5. How does that work? I'd imagine that situation would come up, because there's such.
It does come up.
Yeah.
Sorry, Janine, I didn't mean to talk over you. It does come up. So here are the things that you can do as a business. You can bring someone on as a contractor or a fixed term period, if that happens, until the 6 months happens, and then you can move them to a permanent role if you choose to do so. Or you can bring on someone on a casual basis. So you can backfill that way. Be very, very careful about bringing on casuals, because casuals are, once again, particularly they're a hot topic at the moment, particularly around how long are they casual for, do they become permanent employees, do they get their entitlements, blah, blah. So my suggestion is either a fixed term contract or a contractor that's paid on an hourly basis or a daily basis, and you negotiate with them and they have their own ABN.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Janine.
That's all right.
Ian, I see you've got your hand up again. We'll pop you up on stage. Janine, I'll kick you off the stage.
So, Catie, the notion of redundancy in the context of A, the pandemic, but B, the notion of digital transformation, and not only that, I mean, automation and all that sort of stuff. I mean, redundancy is going to become the norm, I suspect, going forward, because that's what all businesses are trying to do, is to adopt new technologies that are going to actually save labour. So while we're seeing it now as being a difficulty, it's actually going to become something we're all going to have to come to grips with as business people.
It's a yes but no. Here we go again, a yes but no. That's probably my mantra for the day. It's a yes but no in terms of, at the moment, the supply of good qualified people for any role, for a lot of roles across the board and a lot of industry sectors are hard to come by. So that's first and foremost, currently. And in some industry sectors, it's been like that for about 3 years. So instead of losing your people, you would want to, if you have the ability, you would want to retrain. Yeah. And yes, AI and digital transformation is coming in, even in the world of HR, where it's such face-to-face, people-related. But that means that service levels and and client service and client experience levels will increase, and their expectation from clients will increase. Therefore, there's a lot more roles, and there are roles to be had in those areas, and I believe that some of that retraining will happen then, will re-happen in that role. They say that an average person throughout their career will be made redundant 3 to 4 times. So it probably has increased since the pandemic. So that is something to consider. And yes, it's becoming normalised, a bit like working from home is becoming normalised. People are being made redundant. It's not seen as, oh, you must have been a bad worker or a bad performer or something was wrong with you. It is actually a nature of business these days. So yes, I'd agree with that, but I think there's opportunity to retrain into other areas that have more client-facing experience and have client experience involved in it.
I guess that in my mind that comes down very much to the concept of you might ditch the role, but you don't ditch a great person, because the right values alignment, all those cool things are really hard to come by, whereas skills can be taught. So you ditch the role
it's
and you
around the
retrain into
behaviours
a different
again.
role. Yeah.
I'm just going to close this curtain, but I can still listen.
Okay.
The values piece and the culture piece is going to become more prevalent, and that's becoming more prevalent now. That businesses need to take more of a step going towards recruiting for fit, culture fit, and value fit versus skill fit.
Cool. Okay, does that answer your question, Ian?
Thank you, Catie.
Kick you off the stage.
No problem.
Do we have anybody else with that? Do we have any final questions for Catie before I wrap this segment up and she can get the sun out of her eyes?
Oh no, we've done that. I think is it better?
It's still showing. Your screen's showing frozen on my screen, and I don't particularly want to reboot my connection. But as long as you haven't got the sun in your eyes, I'm happy. Do we have any other questions for Catie? That's it. Now it's gone. No more questions? Well, thank you so much, Catie, for sharing that information. It is extremely timely, which is why I thought it was important for us to share that today. But I think also the concept of actually looking at how you can reskill to keep great people is to me, that's the message I'd like to leave everybody with, is keep great people and reskill them for the roles that you need. So any last words, Catie, before I kick you off the stage?
And look, let me reinforce that too, because I can only comment on some of the work that I've been doing in the last 6 months, and I have been looking for example, a sales manager for one of my clients for 9 months, and we only appointed them yesterday because we couldn't get the right fit. I've been looking for accountants, and I may have found, for another client, I may have found one, and that was yesterday as well, and we've been looking for 2.5 months. So good people who've got the right value set, the right behaviour fit, are very, very difficult to come by, and the salaries are increasing exponentially.
Okay.
And people and businesses are counter-offering these employees to stay in their own roles, and some are getting $100,000 more a year. Yeah, that's how serious we're talking. So keep your people, get some people strategies and culture strategies in place, and retention strategies.
Fantastic. Thank you, Catie. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Small Business Matters. On the next episode, I'll be talking with Kerry-Ann Nelson from Operation Verve about having the right systems in place to bring out the best in your remote workers. You can catch the recording by subscribing to the Better Business for Good newsletter, or join us live for Connect, Collaborate, Contribute with our impact partner, Just Peoples, on 26 May. All the details are on our website at BB4G.co.
Better Business for Good TV. By small business owners, for small business owners.